The Atlantic Ocean. Cold, dark, and endless. Its swells roll beneath a sky of gunmetal gray, the wind carrying the scent of salt and steel. It is the year 1943, but not the 1943 we know. In this timeline, history has bent just enough to place two giants of naval warfare on a collision course. On one side, the German battleship Bismarck, the pride of the Kriegsmarine, survivor of her first hunt, her hull scarred yet unbroken. On the other, the USS Iowa, the United States Navy's newest, fastest, and most heavily armed battleship, prowling the mid-Atlantic with the confidence of a predator that has never met its match. The war has already raged for over 3 years. But in this alternate reality, a single decision by Hitler changes everything. Instead of ordering Bismarck's final sortie into the North Atlantic in 1941, where she was hunted down and sunk, he holds her back, repairing and rearming for a grander purpose. 2 years later, she is unleashed again. But now, the ocean is a far more dangerous place. The Americans have entered the war, their industrial power flooding the seas with steel, and steaming out of Norfolk is the fastest battleship the world has ever seen, USS Iowa, capable of 33 knots, armed with 9 massive 16-inch guns and bristling with the latest radar fire control. It begins as a phantom rumor on the radio waves. A convoy escort reports a sighting, a shadow on the horizon, too large to be anything but a battleship. The message crackles through the encrypted channels, passing from destroyer to cruiser to fleet headquarters. It reaches the desk of Rear Admiral Willis Lee, commanding the Iowa's task group. He leans over the map, tracing the coordinates with a finger, his mind already calculating bearing, speed, intercept. Lee knows the name whispered by the British liaison officer standing at his shoulder. Bismarck, the ghost of the Atlantic, the ship that once sent the Royal Navy into a desperate week-long chase, the ship that sank the Hood with a single, shattering salvo. Now she is back, and this time Lee is determined that she will not vanish into the fog. The order is given. Iowa's turbines thunder to life, her bow slicing into the swells. Sailors hurry to their battle stations, the metallic clatter of ammunition hoists echoing below decks. In the plotting room, a team of radar operators watches the green glowing sweep of the PPI scope, waiting for the faintest blip. Above them, gunners check the elevation and traverse of the Mark 7 rifles, each shell a steel giant capable of smashing through a foot of armor at 20 miles. Far to the east, Bismarck cuts through the Atlantic like a wolf on the hunt. Her captain in this timeline is not Ernst Lindemann, but a younger, more aggressive officer, Kapitän zur See Friedrich Henke, chosen for his willingness to take risks and seek decisive battle. He has orders from Berlin: disrupt American convoys, draw out the enemy's capital ships, destroy them if the sea between them is no longer empty water. It is a killing ground. The horizon erupts in blossoms of spray and fire as steel arcs through the air at twice the speed of sound. Every 30 seconds, another broadside tears at the Atlantic, the sound a rolling, physical thing that rattles teeth and shakes bones. On Iowa's bridge, Admiral Lee watches the radar plots update with every pulse. The Bismarck is dancing, weaving to throw off the firing solution, but Iowa's radar does not blink. Each salvo walks closer, the great geysers tightening around the German battleship like a noose. In Bismarck's plotting room, Kapitän Henke feels the pressure mounting. The first American shells have landed uncomfortably close, one throwing a wave over the bow, the concussion rattling the bridge glass. His gunnery officers are quick to respond, adjusting elevation, anticipating the Iowa's next zig. Bismarck's fire control still relies on optics and primitive radar, but the crew is drilled to perfection. Henke believes that if he can land just one crippling hit on Iowa's superstructure, her bridge, her fire control towers, he can blind the enemy and close the distance for the kill. The first real blow comes 20 minutes into the fight. A 15-inch German shell, fired at nearly 20 miles, crashes down on Iowa's No. 2 turret. It strikes the thick barbette armor and fails to penetrate, but the impact sends a shockwave through the entire forward section. In the plotting rooms below, men are thrown from their stools. The smell of scorched paint and cordite fills the air. Lee steadies himself, his voice level as he orders a slight course change, a feint to lure Bismarck into overcompensating. The crew of Iowa feels a new weight settle over them. This is not target practice. This is not the long-range duels of training. This is a fight against an opponent with equal determination, equal skill, and a reputation for destroying legends. Every man on board knows the name Hood and what happened to her. But the Americans hit back. At 09:42 hours, Iowa's fifth salvo finds its mark. A 16-inch shell smashes into Bismarck's forward superstructure, ripping through the radar set and scattering twisted metal across the upper deck. The bridge shudders. Several of Henke's officers are hurled to the floor. Blood spatters the chart table. The SeaTac screen goes black. Bismarck is now fighting half-blind. Henke reacts instantly. He abandons the long-range duel and orders flank speed, bringing Bismarck into a shallow turn to close the gap. If he can get within 12 miles, the dispersion of Iowa's shells will widen, and his gunners might overwhelm the American defenses. It is a gamble, but the alternative is to be whittled down until nothing remains. Iowa's lookouts spot the shift in posture. The German battleship's bow is now cutting hard through the waves, her decks awash, her forward turrets locked in place, like the gaze of a predator. Lee reads it for what it is, an attempt to force a knife fight. He knows that at closer range, even Iowa's armor will be vulnerable to those 15-inch shells. The next 20 minutes are a brutal test of nerve. Iowa maintains her distance, engines howling, turrets traversing smoothly to keep the German ship under constant fire. Bismarck, closing steadily, fires with every opportunity, her salvos bracketing the American battleship again and again. At 10:03 hours, another hit. A shell from Bismarck plunges through Iowa's aft deck near turret 3, punching into the upper handling room. The explosion is contained, but the blast kills 4 men instantly and knocks out one of the ship's secondary 5-inch mounts. The damage reports race to the bridge. Lee's jaw tightens. He cannot afford to let Bismarck get closer. And so, the order comes. All ahead flank, maintain range. Iowa surges forward, throwing a wall of spray to either side. The big guns thunder again, their recoil sending vibrations deep into the keel. This salvo is different. Radar and optical sights working in perfect unison, the range tables recalculated to account for Bismarck's zigzag. The hit is devastating. One shell punches deep into Bismarck's bow, another strikes her midships, penetrating the thin armor over the boat deck and exploding near her aircraft hangar. Fire erupts instantly, black smoke curling into the overcast sky. Crewmen rush with hoses, their shouts lost in the wind and the constant boom of the guns. Henke refuses to break off. Bismarck is hurt, but she is not beaten. In fact, the damage only hardens his resolve. He orders a starboard turn, aiming to cross Iowa's wake and rake her with a full broadside. The American battleship answers in kind. 9 barrels, elevate, lock, and fire again, each blast sending shockwaves down the decks. The ocean between them is a cauldron now. Explosions throwing water hundreds of feet into the air, flames flickering through the haze. The sky echoing with the sound of a war that will never be written in the official history books. For the men on both ships, the world is narrowed to a single horizon, one enemy, one fight, and the knowledge that only one of these steel giants will see another sunrise. The horizon is gone. What was once a line between sea and sky is now a shifting wall of smoke, flame, and spray. The Iowa and the Bismarck are locked together in a deadly orbit, their gun crews working like machines, their officers calculating each salvo with a surgeon's precision. But there is no room for patience anymore. The range has fallen below 15 miles. Every shell that lands now has the potential to decide the battle. On Iowa's bridge, Admiral Lee feels the weight of time pressing on him. He knows his ship's speed advantage is slipping away in the heavy seas, that every minute Bismarck gains ground brings them closer to the point where her guns can punch through Iowa's belt armor. Radar still gives the Americans the first shot of each exchange, but the Germans are closing with grim determination, their optical rangefinders finding their rhythm even through the haze. At 10:18 hours, Bismarck lands her most dangerous hit yet. A 15-inch shell slams into Iowa's forward superstructure just below the bridge wings. The blast rips through the flag plot room, shattering glass, spraying fragments, and killing 3 officers outright. Communications between the bridge and the aft fire control are severed for a full 30 seconds. An eternity in a duel like this. Lee grips the edge of the chart table, his knuckles white, as damage control reports race in over the phones. But Iowa's crew has trained for this. The circuits are rerouted, the gunners never miss a beat, and the next salvo is already in the air. On Bismarck, the damage is mounting. The fires amidships are spreading despite the efforts of damage control teams, the heat forcing men to abandon compartments. One of her secondary turrets on the port side has been knocked out entirely, the wreckage smoking and twisted. Henke knows he cannot absorb this kind of punishment forever. But he also knows that a wounded predator can be more dangerous than a healthy one. He makes his move. Bismarck turns sharply to port, presenting her full broadside at just under 12 miles, the perfect range for her 15-inch rifles. The sea foams at her prow as she heels into the turn, the massive barrels elevating and locking with mechanical precision. 8 guns fire as one, the recoil rolling through the decks like the shock of an earthquake. The shells arrive in a heartbeat. One punches deep into Iowa's hull just forward of the aft magazines. The explosion floods 2 compartments instantly and knocks out a set of electrical generators. Another shell slams into the base of turret 1, denting the armor and jamming one of the 3 massive barrels. The concussion throws men from their feet on every deck. Below, the damage control teams are waist-deep in freezing seawater, scrambling to keep the flooding from spreading. But Lee doesn't flinch. He orders a counter-turn to starboard, bringing Iowa's own broadside to bear at point-blank range. In battleship terms, anything under 10 miles is intimate. 9 16-inch rifles unleash a storm. The first shell hits Bismarck's forward main turret, cracking the armor faceplate and jamming the left gun. Another smashes through her upper hull near the waterline, flooding a boiler room and slowing her by 2 knots. The third plunges into her aft deck, igniting ammunition for the secondary batteries and sending a column of fire hundreds of feet into the air. The battle has entered its most brutal phase. There is no subtle maneuvering now. Only 2 wounded giants trading blow for blow, each trying to land the killing strike before their own strength fails. The noise is deafening, the deck constantly shuddering underfoot, the air thick with smoke and cordite. Every surface is slick with seawater or oil. Every man knows the margin for error is gone. By 10:32 hours, the range has closed to under 9 miles. Bismarck's speed is slipping, but her gunners are still accurate, their salvos landing closer with each ranging shot. One shell crashes into Iowa's upper aft deck, destroying a 5-inch mount and showering fragments across the crew clustered near the open hatches. Screams mix with shouted orders as medics drag the wounded to the makeshift aid station in the wardroom, and yet, the Americans sense the momentum shifting. Bismarck's aft turrets have fallen silent. The smoke pouring from her midships is darker now, laced with orange flame. Her turning circle is widening, a sign her steering may be damaged. Lee orders Iowa to hold course and pour every available shell into the German ship's vitals. The next American salvo is the most punishing yet. One shell plunges into Bismarck's forward magazines. The armored bulkheads hold, but just barely. The shock wave rips through the bow, killing dozens instantly and knocking Henke unconscious for nearly half a minute. The ship lists 2 degrees to port, water pouring through the ruptured hull plates. When Henke comes to, the bridge is chaos. Damage control reports flood in. Flooding in the forward compartments, electrical failures in the aft engine rooms, half the crew cut off from central command, but the German captain refuses to order retreat. Instead, he gives the command that will define his ship's fate. All ahead, close to 5 miles. We finish this. The Atlantic roars its approval, waves hammering both hulls as the distance between them shrinks to the point where each can see the other's individual gun flashes through the smoke. This is no longer a battle between machines. It is a knife fight between warriors. The range is 5 miles now, too close for comfort, too close for retreat. Each ship can see the other's bridge windows glinting through the haze. Each muzzle flash a blinding flare in the smoke-choked air. The water between them boils with splashes and fragments. Every gun on both ships that can bear is firing. On Iowa, the concussion from her own broadsides hammers the crew's chests, the shock running through steel and bone alike. Her 16-inch shells, each weighing nearly as much as a small car, leave the barrels in a flat, deadly arc, crossing the distance in seconds. Radar is almost irrelevant now. The German ship is in plain view. Fire control officers shout adjustments over the roar, their voices raw from smoke and strain. Bismarck answers with the fury of a cornered beast. Her 15-inch guns belch flame, the recoil shoving the barrels back into their cradles before slamming forward again for the next round. The German shells come in low and hard, their impact on Iowa's hull sending deep gut punch vibrations through the deck. One shell strikes just below Iowa's bridge, punching into the wardroom and gutting the space with fire. Another smashes into her starboard side at the waterline, bursting a fuel tank and sending a river of oil streaming into the Atlantic. The American damage control teams are running on instinct now, their boots sliding on wet steel as they fight to keep the flooding contained. Below decks, the air is stifling, thick with smoke and the tang of burning oil. Men work in total darkness where the lights have failed, their only illumination the dim red glow from emergency lanterns. But the fight turns savage for Bismarck, too. Iowa's latest salvo lands with devastating effect. One shell tears through Bismarck's forward superstructure, obliterating her secondary fire control and scattering bodies across the open deck. Another plunges into her engine spaces, wrecking a turbine and slowing her to barely 20 knots. Henke grips the rail of the bridge, his knuckles white, as he feels the vibration of his ship faltering beneath him. At this range, Iowa's heavier armor is telling. German shells shatter against her turrets and belt, causing damage but failing to cripple her main battery. The American guns keep pounding, their rhythm unbroken, their aim relentless. Bismarck's reply is slower now, her surviving gunners taking longer between salvos as damage mounts and crew losses grow. Then, at 10:46 hours, the blow that seals Bismarck's fate arrives. A 16-inch shell from Iowa's forward turret plunges through the German battleship's deck armor just aft of turret Anton. It penetrates into the forward magazine. For a moment, nothing happens, just a dull thud. Then, a blinding flash tears through the bow. The shockwave rips the turret from its mount, hurling debris high into the air. The blast can be seen and felt aboard Iowa, even through the din of battle. On Bismarck's bridge, chaos erupts. Henke is thrown to the deck, his ears ringing, his vision a blur. The forward compartments are gone, obliterated. Hundreds are dead in an instant. The bow settles lower in the water, the list growing to port. Still, the German captain refuses to strike his flag. If he is to die, it will be with his guns firing. Iowa presses the advantage. Lee orders continuous fire, aiming to silence the remaining German turrets before they can land a lucky hit. His gunners comply with mechanical precision, salvo after salvo pounding Bismarck's midships and aft decks. The German battleship's return fire becomes sporadic, desperate, a handful of shells that splash wide or shatter harmlessly against Iowa's thick belt. But in the chaos, Bismarck still has teeth. One of her last salvos lands squarely on Iowa's number 3 turret. The armor holds, but the concussion jams the training gear, freezing the massive guns in place. For the remainder of the fight, Iowa will have to rely on her forward batteries alone. By 10:58 hours, Bismarck is dead in the water. Her superstructure is a tangled ruin, her main battery reduced to a single operational turret. Fires rage unchecked, the black smoke towering so high it blots out the overcast sky. Her list has grown to 7 degrees. The bow is nearly awash. Henke stands on what remains of his bridge, the icy wind in his face, the taste of blood on his lips. He knows the battle is lost, but surrender is unthinkable. Instead, he orders the scuttling charges set. If the Atlantic is to take Bismarck, it will be by German hands, not American shells. From Iowa's deck, lookouts report flashes deep inside the German ship. A moment later, a muffled series of explosions rocks Bismarck's hull. The list increases sharply, seawater rushing over her decks. She begins to roll to port, the great ship groaning as if in protest. Her crew leaps into the freezing water, their shouts lost in the wind. Lee watches in silence as the Bismarck, pride of the Kriegsmarine, disappears beneath the waves. Her bow rises one last time, blackened and broken, before sliding under for good. The ocean swallows her whole, leaving only an oil-slick scar on the gray Atlantic. The battle is over, but the echoes will haunt both crews for the rest of their lives. The Atlantic is quiet again. The smoke has thinned to ragged shreds drifting across the waves. The wind has lost its howl, replaced by the low groan of Iowa's hull as she steadies in the swells. Beneath her decks, the crew moves in silence, their voices low, their faces pale from exhaustion. The adrenaline that carried them through the fight has burned away, leaving only the heavy weight of what they've seen and what they've done. The sea is littered with wreckage, splintered lifeboats, twisted steel, the remains of men who only hours ago were firing back with everything they had. The water is so cold it leaches the life from a man in minutes. American destroyers pick their way through the debris, hauling shivering German survivors from the black water. Some cling to bits of wreckage with numb hands. Others do not resist as the sailors pull them aboard. They are past resisting anything. From Iowa's bridge, Admiral Lee watches the rescue unfold. He had expected to feel satisfaction, pride in a decisive victory. Instead, there is only a quiet ache. Bismarck was a worthy opponent, fought with skill and courage to the very end. Destroying her was a necessity. But the ocean does not care about necessity. It swallows pride and defeat alike, leaving only the empty horizon. Word of the battle spreads quickly. Across the Atlantic, newspapers carry headlines in block letters. Bismarck destroyed by U.S. battleship. In London, Churchill reads the cables with a grim smile. The ship that once sent the Royal Navy into a desperate chase has met her end not at British hands, but under the guns of an American giant. In Berlin, the news is a blow to the Kriegsmarine's already fragile prestige. The loss of Bismarck in 1943, 2 years later than in our own history, comes at a time when Germany can least afford it. No replacement of her size or power can be built before the war's tide turns for good. The implications ripple outward. The Atlantic convoys, once threatened by the specter of a German capital ship breaking through their escorts, now sail with a little more confidence. The surface war in the Atlantic becomes a war of submarines alone. Without Bismarck, Germany's surface fleet is little more than a fleet in name. For the Americans, the victory cements the reputation of the Iowa-class battleships as the most formidable warships afloat. In this timeline, their speed and radar-guided firepower have been proven not just in theory, but in a duel against one of the most feared battleships in history. Naval planners take note. The age of the big-gun battleship is nearing its end. Carriers and aircraft will soon rule the seas. But for now, Iowa stands as a reminder of what steel and gunnery can achieve when pushed to the limit. And yet, for the men who fought in the battle, the memory is not about headlines or strategy. It is about the moment the enemy first appeared on the radar screen. The deafening crack of their own guns firing, the shudder through the deck when an enemy shell found its mark, the acrid taste of smoke, the feel of sweat and salt on their skin, the sound of damage control reports echoing down passageways. It is about the knowledge that somewhere, aboard that other ship, other men were living the same moments, and that for many of them, it ended in the cold, dark water. In later years, survivors from both Iowa and Bismarck would meet, sometimes at memorials, sometimes by chance. There were handshakes, awkward silences, and unspoken understanding. The sea had made them enemies for a day, but the same sea had also made them brothers in the strange fraternity of those who have looked death in the face and returned. In this alternate history, the battle in the mid-Atlantic between Bismarck and USS Iowa is remembered as one of the last great surface duels in naval warfare. Not for its strategic impact alone, but for its sheer improbability. Two steel titans, from different oceans and different worlds, brought together by the currents of war and the stubborn will of the men who commanded them. It is a story told in wardrooms and veterans' halls, in the quiet pride of those who survived, and in the silence for those who did not. And somewhere out there, beneath miles of cold water, lies the twisted hull of Bismarck. Her guns silent, her decks empty, but her legend unbroken. The ocean holds her now, as it holds the memories of all such battles, the clash of empires, the courage of men, and the fleeting nature of victory. If you've sailed with me through this story, you know that history is rarely set in stone. Change one decision, delay one order, shift one encounter by a single year, and the entire course of events can transform. The Bismarck and the Iowa never met in our reality, but here, in the realm of possibility, they did. And the Atlantic will remember their meeting forever.